We begin the Gemara today on the bottom of Davav Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. We're in the middle of an inyan here that Gemara is trying to figure out where would there be a source to say that a esse is doiche a lois esse sheyesh boi kares. And therefore, when it comes to Yibum and the Arayis, we have to have a special pasuk to come and teach me, Aleha, to tell me that the Arayis is not pushed off with the mitzvah of Yibum. That's the discussion. So what was the last source that the Gemara brought? There's a mitzvah in some situations to give a person misas bezdin. And we're talking specifically about the misa of sreifa, which entails cooking the lead and then also the making the fire and cooking it, which is an act of chilul Shabbos. And there's a special pasuk of Moshe Seichem that comes and teaches me that mitzvah of v'humos will not push off the loisesa of Shabbos, which is a loisesa sheyesh bekaris. So from this, the Gemara wanted to say, we need a special pasuk to say that. Over here, the mitzvah saseh does not push off the loisesa sheyesh bekaris. But from here, we can understand that generally speaking, a mitzvah saseh does push off a loisesa sheyesh bekaris. That's why I need a special pasuk here to say that this mitzvah saseh of misas bezdin does not push off the Shabbos, which is a loisesa sheyesh bekaris. So the Gemara now refutes this and explains that the pshat in this braise, this whole discussion about giving the einish of Misa on Shabbos, has nothing to do with our discussion regarding a mitzvah saseh pushing off a lav sheyesh beikaris. It's like the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of Vav Amud Beis. Amar Rav Shemi bar Ashi, Hi Tane. So this Tane over here that's discussing this, Loi mishum dasi esse v'dochi lois esse. He's not saying that you need a special pasuk to tell me that you can't give the Misas Bezdin on Shabbos, because otherwise I would have thought that the esse of a humas pushes off even the lois esse of Shabbos, which is a lois esse that has kares. Elo, rather the basis of why you need a special pasuk is for a completely different reason. Mishum, because I would think the maisi lay, the Bach says mikal v'chaymer, that to give misa for a person that's chayiv misa should push off Shabbos, and I would think that maybe you can do that because of the following kal v'chaymer. What's the kal v'chaymer? V'hachi ka'amar. This is what the Braise is saying. When would I say that the pasuk of chilul Shabbos, that you're not allowed to be machal Shabbos, applies b'shar malachas? It applies to any malacha that's done always, anytime, chutz mimisas bezdin. But it does not apply to a case where you're doing a malacha on Shabbos, whether it's havara, whether it's bishul, for the sake of misas bezdin. Aval misas bezdin dachi Shabbos. To give misas bezdin, that is going to be deicha Shabbos. Why? What's the kal v'chaymer? It's like the Gemara, mikal v'chaymer. Here's the kal v'chaymer. Ma avodah. When it comes to doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, shehi chamura. It's more stringent, it's more important than Shabbos itself, and v'doicha Shabbos. The avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, bringing the carbon tamid, the carbon musaf, which is a chilul Shabbos, the shechita and everything that's done there, it's a chilul Shabbos. And nevertheless, the avodah of these karbanis is more stringent than Shabbos. It's doicha Shabbos. So now, what's the halacha regarding the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash? Ritziche doicha isa. If you have a kayin that's, God forbid, a ritzeyach, so that will push off the Aveda. If the Kayan comes into the Beis HaMikdash and he wants to do the Aveda, we're going to take him away. It pushes off the Aveda. Shenem, the Pasuk says, Me'im mizbechi tikachanu lamos. That a Kayan, which is a ritzeyach, you take him from the Mizbeach, you take him away from his Aveda, and you give him the punishment of Misa. So what do you see over here? A Kayin that wants to do the Aveda, he's taken away from the Mizbeach, he's taken away from the Aveda, and you have to give him the Einish of Misa. Right? So Shabbos, so how much more so when it comes to Shabbos? Shenitchis mipnei Aveda, that the mitzvah of Shabbos, which is pushed off because of the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash. Right? So in other words, the point is Shabbos is a level lower than the Aveda that's done in the Beis HaMikdash. So most definitely we should say so definitely when you have a ritzeyach that you have to give him the einish of Misa on Shabbos, so that einish Misa should push off Shabbos. So the point of the kal v'chaymer is, if a ritzeyach that's chayiv Misa, the pasuk says that you push off the Aveda, you take him away from the Mizbeach, lamos, and you give him the punishment of Misa right there and then, and you push off the Aveda, how much more so Shabbos, which is lower than the level of the Aveda, the Aveda pushes off Shabbos, for sure, you should be allowed to give him the punishment of Misa, even on Shabbos.
You said right there and then.
That's what it says, man. Mizbechi tikachenu lamus. So it's mashma that you give him the misa right away when he wants to do the Aveda. So the same thing applies to Shabbos.
That's the whole Kavachayim, that word.
Yeah, Manachanami. So the Gemara says now, based on this, now if you remember, going back to the Braisa, what was the Lashon of the Braisa? The Braisa kept on going back and forth. When the Braisa brought this, the Braisa says, Oy Einoi, right? Maybe not. If you look before in Davav Amud Beis, it says, maybe it goes in Shar Malachis, Chutz Mi Misas Bezdin. Then the Braisa says, Oy Einoi, maybe not, Ela Fila Misas Bezdin. And then it says again, Oy Einoi, Ela Fila B'Shabbos. So the Gemara now asks, Umay Oy Einoi de Ka'amar. What is the Oy Einoi that the Braisa is saying? If we have a clear Kavachaymer to teach me that you could push off Shabbos to give the Einish of Misa, so then it's a Kavachaymer. What is there a refutation to this Kavachaymer? What is the Oy Einoi? So the Gemara says, Hachi Ka'amar. Yes, this is what the Braisa is saying. I can refute the Kavachaymer and say as follows: Kvuras mes mitzvah techiach. The halacha of burying a mes mitzvah, which is a mess that there's nobody there to bury. So you can learn from there that to give the Einish Misa does not push off Shabbos, even though it will push off the Aveda. How is that? Shadeiches Aveda, to bury a mes mitzvah pushes off the Aveda. If there's a case of a mes mitzvah, so then you have to leave the Aveda and go and bury this mes mitzvah. But ve'ein deiches Shabbos, burying a mes mitzvah on Shabbos, that does not push off Shabbos. So therefore I could learn from there and say, the same when it comes to the punishment of Misa, maybe I should compare it to the kavod of a mes mitzvah, even though it's deiche the Aveda, but it's not deiche Shabbos. But then Hadamar, the Braisa again says Oy Einoi, and says that no, maybe giving the Einish Misa is deiche Shabbos. So what is the Braisa saying again? That I would say that it is deiche Shabbos. Kavod mes mitzvah. Maybe I should actually say when it comes to the kavod of a mes mitzvah titche Shabbos. Maybe this itself, to bury a mes mitzvah, should push off Shabbos. Mikavachaymer, from the very same Kavachaymer that we said before, if the Aveda, which we see is more important than Shabbos, it pushes off Shabbos. When it comes to the Kvur of a mes mitzvah, it pushes off the Aveda in the Beis HaMikdash. You learn this out from an extra pasuk that it says la'achaisai, by a nazir. So from there you learn out that a kayin could make himself tameh even for a mes mitzvah, and it's deichad aveda. So Shabbos shenitche mipnei aveda. So Shabbos, which is lower than the aveda, it's pushed off because of the aveda. Einay din shetehei kvuras mes mitzvah deichaisa. So most definitely, isn't there a kavachayim here to say that the kvur of a mes mitzvah should push off Shabbos? So the Braisa is saying, maybe Hagufa, maybe Taki we should say, that to bury a mes mitzvah should push off Shabbos. And if so, I have no refutation to the original Kavachayim here, that giving the Einish of Misa should be done even on Shabbos. If the Einish of Misa is done even when it pushes off Aveda, for sure the Einish of Misa should be done even on Shabbos. That's the discussion in the Braisa, when it goes back and forth. So on that, the Braisa concludes, because we have a Kavachayim, that it would push off Shabbos. That's why we have the pasuk of Loisavaru, Eish b'chol Meshvei Seichem, and the word Meshvei Seichem teaches me that there's no Einish of Misa on Shabbos. This is the Pshat, this is Rav Shimi Barashi's answer. So the whole discussion all revolves around the fact that we have a Kavachaymer, and this has nothing to do with the general rule that we would say that Esa is Deiche Alois Esa Sheyesh Bei Kares. And that's why I need a special pasuk to teach me here that the Einish Misa is not Deiche Shabbos. Now the Gemara goes back to the Havamina. According to what we were thinking about the Pshat that we had before, when we were trying to prove from here that a Esa is Deicha Lois Esa Sheyesh Be'Kodesh. So what did we think before? That the Asi Esa V'dachi Lois Esa. That the basis of why you need a special pasuk to say that the mitzvah to give a Einish Misa does not push off Shabbos is because otherwise in other places in Torah an Esa is Deicha Lois Esa. So according to that pshat that we said in the beginning before, my oy einoi de ka'amar. How would we explain the discussion in the Braisa when it goes back and forth, when it brings the oy einoi? So the Gemara explains according to that as well. Hachi ka'amar, this is what the Braisa is saying. Mani mekayim mechal mois yumos. When the Torah says that if you mechal Shabbos, you chayiv misa b'shar malachos, it refers to any other situation where you do a malacha, chutz mi misas bezdin. Besides when you have this mitzvah of giving the misas bezdin. Alo misas bezdin dachi Shabbos. When you have the mitzvah of giving misas bezdin, maybe this would be dachi Shabbos. The asi ese v'dachi lois ese. Because over here, maybe I would say that a ese pushes off a lois ese. and even a loisese of Shabbos where there's a chiyuv of kares. And now what's the oy einay in the Braise? Hadar Amar. Then the Braise says, wait a minute, maybe we could say, when would I say that a esa pushes off a loisese? That's a loisese greida. Just a plain loisese where there's einish of malchus. Loisese sheyesh be kares. But a loisese like Shabbos where there's kares, mi shamet le'dedachi. Do you ever hear, do you ever have a source anywhere to say that a esa should push off a loisese sheyesh be kares? That's the oyenoi of the Braisa. So then, Hadama, the Braisa says yet again oyenoi. Why does the Braisa say again oyenoi? That no, maybe I should say that the einish of Misa pushes off Shabbos, just like I always find that a esa is doicha loisese. And the Braisa is saying as follows, a very interesting svara. O to esa, the doiches loisese. This that I find b'chlal, that an esa pushes off a loisese. So again, what was the source of that? We learned it out from shatnas and tzitzis that a esa pushes off a regular loisese without kares. That we have a source for. So what's the pshat over there when it pushes off the loisese? Lav loisese chomu minei. Isn't the loisese more stringent than the mitzvah saseh? Look at the punishment. By a loisese, if a person is over on a loisese, you get malchus for it. If a person is over on a esa, you don't get malchus. That's what Rashi brings here. So every loisese, if you look at the punishment, you could see it's more stringent than an esa. And nevertheless, what's the halacha? The esa is doiche the loisese. So v'ka'asi esa v'dachile. And nevertheless, it pushes it off. So just like I see that an esa pushes off a regular lav, even though the regular lav is more chomer than the esa, so the Braisa now is saying, mali chumre zute or mali chumre rabba. There should be no difference if the chumre of that loisese is a slight chumre, because you get malchus for it, or it's an even more stringent, more harsher chumrah, the fact that you get kares for it. And therefore, esa should push off even a loisese sheyesh be kares. So the Braisa is saying that it's the reason why a esa is deicha a loisese is not because the esa is more stringent than the loisese. The Amos says a loisese has a bigger einish. And nevertheless, an esa pushes off the loisese. So say the same thing when you get to a loisese sheyesh be kares, that even though it's kares, and it's more stringent, but the esa should still push it off. And that's why you should be able to give the einish of Misa even on Shabbos and push off a leis esa sheyesh bekares. So what's taka the reason if a esa is not as stringent as a lav, either because there's malchus or because there's kares? Why does the esa push off the leis esa? So I mentioned this already a few times before. The Alter Rebbe says because the reason is because by an esa there's a hamshacha through the mitzvah that you're doing with an action that draws down a connection, a gilui elokus. By refraining from doing an Aveda, it doesn't bring down that kind of a hamshacha. So even though it's true when you do an Aveda, so there's a pagam you create, there's a rebellion against the Eibishter that's being done, and it deserves a bigger einish. But on the other hand, in the positive, when you do a mitzvah, there's a bigger hamshacha. So therefore, it's teiche a loisese, and the Braisa is now saying, maybe even a loisese sheyesh bekares. Talmud loima loisavaru, and then the Braisa concludes. That's why we need a special pasuk to say loisavaru to teach me that the mitzvah of giving v'humas, of giving the einish misa, does not push off Shabbos, does not push off a loisese sheyesh bekares. That's the explanation in the Braisa according to the Havamina. But this is only a Havamina though. What was the Gemara's conclusion? Rav Shimi bar Ashi said that the whole discussion in the Braisa really has nothing to do with Lav Sheyesh Bekares. It revolves around the Kavachaymer that we had, as the Gemara brought before. So where are we holding here? We're still stuck with our original question regarding a Yevama, which is also an erva. Why do I need a special pasuk to say that the mitzvah of Yibum will not be deiche the lav sheyesh bekares? L'chayr, it's an obvious thing. Why would I think that it should be deiche lav sheyesh bekares, and we need a special pasuk of alecha? That's where we're still holding. So now the Gemara tried to bring various sources, and they were all refuted. So the Gemara is going to try a different approach. Ella sagt the Gemara, itzterich. I need that special pasuk allowed to teach me that Yibum, the mitzvah of Yibum, is not deiche the erve when the Yevama is an erve for him. Because salke daita chamine, I would think to say as follows: Tehevi hai eishes ach. This woman that passes away, which every Yevama, which is an eishes ach, it's your brother's wife. Usually, what's an eishes ach? Usually, eishes ach is also an erve. You're not allowed to marry a brother's wife, including after he passes away. And that's an erva which is kares for this. So now this eishes ach should be a davar shahaya b'chlal. This is one of the arayis, which was part of all the other arayis which the Torah writes together, that the kol te'evis leisasu. And it's part of all the arayis, v'yatzam and aklal. And here, with the mitzvah of Yibum, it leaves the klal of all the arayis to say that there's a mitzvah of Yibum when the brother passes away, that he's miyabim her. So now it's not an isser anymore, it becomes a mitzvah. So it leaves the klal. So now we have the following kind of limud, that once it leaves the klal, lilamid, it comes to teach this chiddush, that it's different than the whole klal, loy lilamid alatzma yatsa. And this is not only coming to teach regarding this erva of Eishes Ach, that it's mutter and it's a mitzvah to be miyavim her, el lilamid ala klal kula yatsa. Once it goes out of the klal, it comes to teach me regarding all the arayis, which it was included with, that regarding all of them, that if there's a mitzvah of Yibum, we push off any of the arayis to be mekayim, the mitzvah of Yibum. Right, we say this every morning in the Yud Gimel Midas, and we had it before here in the Gemara. Once it leaves the klal, so then it teaches me for all the arayis that Yibum should push it off. And the Gemara brings a specific example regarding this klal. This concept of something that was in a klal and then it goes out of the klal, so it's a gili, it's a revelation for the entire klal as well. So ketzad, how is this applied? So it says, a person that eats from a carbon shlomim v'tumasei olav, and while he eats from the shlomim, he's tamei. So the pasuk there concludes v'nichresa, that he gets kares. So the question is, why does the Torah specify shlomim separately? V'aloi shlomim b'chlal kol hakachim hayu. Shlomim was included in all the other kachim. And it says regarding all the other kachim, Rashi here brings the pasuk, asher yikrav mikol zaracham ala kadoshim asher yagdishu. It says a pasuk regarding all the kachim that you chayav kares if you eat it when you're tamei. So v'lama yatsu. Why does it say specifically regarding shlomim out of the klal? The answer is, it goes out to teach regarding everything else, to compare everything else to the shlomim. To tell you, ma shlomim, just like a carbon shlomim, miyuchadim, it's unique by the sense that it's kachim mizbeach. We're talking about kachim of karbanis that are brought on the mizbeach. Over there's a chi of kares if a person eats from it when he's tamei. Av kol kachim mizbeach. So too, this kares is regarding any kachim mizbeach, only mizbeach, karbanis. Now yatsu kachim bedek habayis. This comes to exclude and say that by kachim bedek habayis, if there's kachim that are just part of the funds that are used for the building in the Beis Hamikdash, over there, if a person eats from this when he's tamei, there's no kares. So here I see this concept yatzam and aklal, and it comes to teach me al aklal kuloi, that it's only for kachim mizbeach, not for kachim bedek habayis. So the Gemara concludes the concept and says, over here as well, hachanami, I can say over here as well, and the Bach says this hey aleph is hava mineh. So I would say as follows, Eishes ach b'chlal kol arayis haisa. The erva of Eishes ach, a brother's wife, was part of all the arayis, that it's aser and it's kares. V'lama yatzase, now it came out of the klal. The Torah came and said that in a case where a person passes away without children, so it leaves the klal, there's a mitzvah of yibum, lahakish elah. It leaves the klal to compare to it. V'lama and to tell you, ma eshesach sharia, just like with eshesach, it left the klal, and it's mutter when the mitzvah of yibum applies. Av kol arayis nami sharia. I should apply the same thing regarding all the other arayis, that in the case where there's a mitzvah of yibum, you're allowed to do the yibum even for ever as well. That's why, so this is the Gemara's hasber, why I need a special pasuk to say, no, aleha, that the arayis still apply, and it's still aser when there's a mitzvah of yibum. It's only Eishes ach that the Torah removed for the mitzvah of yibum. But the Gemara refutes this entire approach. So the Gemara, this case over here of Eishes ach yatzam and aklal is not yatzam and aklal alamad el aklal kula yatza. It's chlal not compared to that kind of a drasha. Mi dami, could you compare what the Torah is doing here regarding Eishes ach to this example that we just brought with the carbon shlomim that left the klal of all the karbanis? How is that compared? Hasam, over there, klal be'isser. The Torah writes the klal in saying an isser that you're not allowed to eat any of the karbanis when you're tamei. And then uprat be'isser. When the Torah specifies the carbon shlomim separately, it leaves the klal. It's also regarding an isser, saying the isser of eating from the carbon shlomim when you're tamei. So the question is, why does the Torah have to specify the isser by carbon shlomim individually if it's included in the isser in general regarding all karbanis that it's also to eat from it when you're tamei? So over there, you can apply the concept of Haya B'chlal, Yatzim and Aklal, so it teaches me regarding all the Klal that it's only for Kachim Mizbeach, not for Kachim Bedek Abayis. But Hacha, over here, when we're talking about the case of Eishesach, Klal Be'isr. First, the Torah included Eishesach together with all of the Yisurim of the Arayis, that it's all Kadis. And then Uprat Beheter. And then the Torah said a heter for Eishesach, that in a case where a person passes away without children, there's a mitzvah of Yibum, so then he's allowed, and he says he has a mitzvah to do Yibum. So the Prat is not something which was included, and now there was no reason for the Torah to say this. There was a reason. The Torah is coming and telling you the heter of Eishesach in a case where you have to do Yibum. So therefore the Gemara says, how do we look at this kind of a Prat here? Here, there's a different rule. There's a limud that goes differently here. Hale Dami. So this case of Yibum is not compared only Ella L'davar Shahaya B'chlal. There's a different kind of a limud. When you have something that was inside the klal together with everything else, and it was aser together with everything else. And V'yatza Lidain B'davar HaChadash. And one detail the Torah came and specified that there's a new chiddush, there's a new heter for this. So you cannot return it and compare it to the rest of the klal unless the pasuk will clearly tell you that it's going to be like the rest of the klal. So Adarabah, the point over here is, from the fact that the Torah tells me that there's a special heter for Eishesach, I know that Eishesach stands out separately. And I can't compare Eishesach to the rest of the Arayis, and I can't compare the rest of the Arayis to Eishesach. So there's no reason, I don't need any special pasuk to say that by the rest of the Arayis, I can't do the mitzvah of Yibum. This is Yatzim Raklal, Lidim B'davar HaChadash. This is a special chiddush only for Eishesach. And now the Gemara brings an example for this kind of a limud as well. The Tanya we learned in the Braise, Davar Shaya B'chlal, something that was together with everything else, V'yatza Lidim B'davar HaChadash, and there's a special chiddush regarding one case, so you can't bring it back. It doesn't have any of the halachas of the klal anymore, unless the pasuk will clearly specify and tell you that it has the halachas like the klal that it just was taken out of. Keitzad, so what's an example for this? So the pasuk says, V'shachat es hakeves, so this is by a Mitzayra where he brings his karbanis on the 8th day. So over there it says that he shechts a keves, a lamb, which he brings as a asham. And the pasuk tells you that that lamb that he brings should be done in the same place where he shechts the chatas and also the carbon oil that he brings. B'makom hakodesh, in a holy place, and then the pasuk concludes ki kachatas ha'asham, that this asham is compared to the chatas hu lakayin. This is for the kayin. So the question now is, she'ein talmud loima ki kachatas ha'asham. The conclusion of the pasuk, when it says kachatas ha'asham, it's not necessary to say. I see it from the beginning of the pasuk that the keves, which is an asham, is shechted in the same place like the chatas. Where is that, by the way? It's on the tzafim side of the mizbeach. That's where all the kachim are shechted. And Rashi also says here, even regarding the place where they put the dam on the mizbeach, you have already in Parshas Tzaves Arin, this week's parsha. So it says in this week's parsha all the halachas about a carbon asham, that the blood of the carbon asham should be done like the chatos. So it says it already there. Why does the Torah here have to say again kachatos to asham? Why did the Torah say this? The answer is Lefisha Yatza Asham Mitzayra Lidim B'davar HaChadash. Because I see that by the asham of a Mitzayra, there are new halachas that are unique that you don't find by any other karbanis of asham. And what is that? B'bayin yad or b'bayin regel. That you have to take the blood and place it on the fingers and on the hands, and the toes and on the hands. Hayaman is the right one. So therefore we see that the zrika of the dam, or the place where you put the dam, is different than a regular carbon asham. So it left the klal as new halachas. So therefore, Yachal, I would think, Lo Yehei Ton Matan Damim Veimurim Legabim Mizbeach. Once I see it has a Dover HaChadash, a new halachas, maybe it left the klal, and you don't have to do the regular zrikas dam on the mizbeach. You don't have to take the pieces of the karbanis and place it on the and burn it on the mizbeach. It's different. It left the klal. That's why the pasuk here has to specify and let me know Talmud Laima ki kachatos ha'asham, that this asham still has the halacha like a regular chatas, which is ma chatas tuna matan dam veimurim legabim mizbeach. Just like a regular chatas, you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach and you place the pieces of the karbanis to burn on the mizbeach. Af asham ton matan dam veimurim legabim mizbeach. We apply the regular halachas of a chatas to an asham that it's done usually on the mizbeach. Now, what do we understand from this? V'iloi ahadre kra. if the pasuk would not specify again kachatas ha'osham, and to say that it's like a regular chatos, hava mina, then I would say lamai the nafak. For this that the Torah says for this asham that it leaves the regular klal, that I do with this blood differently than usual. I take this blood and I place it on the toes and on the hands of this mitzayre. So for that it left, and that you have to do. Ulamai the loy nafak. And what we don't specify, what the Torah does not say that it left and you have to do differently, so that you don't have to do at all. I would think that it doesn't apply. Maybe this is different than a regular carbon asham. Now the Gemara applies this back to what we're speaking about, Eishes Ach. Over here when it comes to the erva of Eishes Ach, which was part of the regular klal of all the arayis, and when it comes to a mitzvah of Yibum, it leaves the klal, and now you have a mitzvah to marry your brother's wife. So Chanami over here as well, Hava Mina, I would say, Eishes Ach to Ishteroi. This Eishes Ach, where the Torah says that there's a heter by the mitzvah of Yibum, so that's a heter only for Eishes Ach, for your brother's wife. But Shar Arayis, any of the other Arayis, if she's also an erva in any other way, Loi, I wouldn't apply it to anything else. I only apply it to this. Davar HaChadosh applies only to the Eishes Ach, but that's not going to teach for the entire klal. You don't compare it to anything else. So therefore the question still remains, why would I think to say that for any other arayis, the mitzvah of Yibum should apply? And I need a special pasuk aleh to tell me that it doesn't. So the Gemara comes up now with another answer. Maybe I would simply say, Teisi, now the Bachir adds, Teisi achois isha b'mematzinu me'eshesach. Maybe I should learn out the other arayis, starting with achois isha, which is that pasuk where it says aleha. So maybe I should compare the other arayis to eishesach. This is the concept of mematzinu. Mematzinu means that when you find a Torah telling you a halacha regarding one case, and I have other cases that are similar, I could compare them to one another. And I would just simply say, ma eishesach mi yavma, just like the Torah is saying regarding your brother's wife, that even though she is an erva, but the mitzvah of Yibum applies to this erva, afachais isha. So too, if she's also your wife's sister, so there's another erva here, tisyabim. Maybe I should say that there's a mitzvah of Yibum as well. So why shouldn't I compare the two and just say, I see the Torah removes one erva, so I should compare it and say that the same is regarding other arayas. But the Gemara says, how could you make such a comparison? Mi dami. What kind of a comparison is this? Hasam chadisura. By the erva of eishesach, there's one issa erva. The fact that it's your brother's wife. And that the Torah was matter. Hacha trei isuri. Over here there are two arayas. If your brother married your wife's sister, so that means that there's going to be two arayas here. Number one, the fact that it's your brother's wife, eishesach, and whatever additional erva there is, the fact that it's your wife's sister, or any of the other arayas that the Mishnah mentioned. So there's two arayas over here. Why would I think to compare it to a case where the Torah was matter it, where it's only one erva? So the Gemara says another svara. Mao de teime, I would think to say, hoyel fe ishtiri. That there's a concept that says that once I see the Torah was matter one erva, automatically that it will include in it that the additional erva that applies here, or that is here, should also become mutter. If the Torah was matter one, that heter for one should extend and be applied to the second erva that is here as well. A new concept, hoyel ve ishtiri. Once one is mutter, the other would be mutter as well. So the Gemara says, where do you find such a concept that if one isser becomes mutter, so then automatically there would be a svara to say to extend that heter to the next erva? Where do we find this concept? So Gemara brings up Raisa, the Tanya, we learned as follows. Mitzayra, shachal shmini shaloi be'erev Pesach. A mitzayra, that the 8th day of his tzaras, when he's becoming tahir, and he has to bring karbanis, and he brings karbanis, so what happens is he has to wait 7 days, and then he goes to the mikveh, and then on the 8th day he brings karbanis. Now this mitzayre cannot enter into the azara of the Beis HaMikdash, because he's what's called still a mechusa kapara. A mechusa kapara, when he didn't bring his karbanis yet on the 8th day, he's not allowed to go into the Beis HaMikdash. Now, what's one of the things that you do with a mitzayre, the pasuk that we just had before? You have to place the blood on his fingers. How do you place the blood on his fingers without him coming into the Beis HaMikdash? You can't take the blood out of the Beis HaMikdash. He can't enter into the Beis HaMikdash, so what do you do? So the way it was done then was, there was a special Shar Nikner, there was that gate, that opening where they were not Mekadesh, that Shar Nikner, and he's able to stick his fingers inside over there, and once he sticks his fingers inside, you can put the blood on his fingers. Okay, and now, this is based on what's called Bias Miktsas Loi Shmei Bia. According to this Braisa, when you stick in just your finger and you didn't fully enter, so he's allowed to stick in just his finger. He's not allowed to go in fully, but the finger, yes. Okay, so now what happened over here is, we're talking about this Mitzayda on the 8th day that wants to come there, and he's standing by the opening of Shar Nikner. Now, when he stands over there in the opening of Shar Nikner, where is he standing? If you're in the Beis HaMikdash, he's standing in the Ezras Noshim. The Ezras Noshim is right in front of the Shar Nikner, which is the Beis HaMikdash, the Azara. The Azara itself is the Machne Shchina, like when it talks about in the Torah, when you get to the various places that a person is allowed to go into. So the Azara itself is the Machne Shchina. The rest of the Har HaBayis, including the Ezras Noshim, where this Mitzayda would be standing, is what's called Machne Leviyah. And then the rest of Yerushalayim would be called Machne Yisrael. So this Mitzayda enters into the Ezras Noshim, and he places his finger there into the Beis HaMikdash to be able to sprinkle the blood to put the blood on his finger. So now this 8th day of the Mitzayda fell out Be'erev HaPesach. Fell out in Erev Pesach, so he wants to be mitayed himself with the carbon that he's going to bring in order to be able to bring a carbon Pesach and eat from the carbon Pesach. Now, but what happened? V'ra keri boy bayayim. This person saw keri on that day, so now he became tummy. Once a person sees keri on that day, and the Rashi says he saw keri on that day, and he even went to the mikveh. He went to the mikveh, so he's a tful yom. So, and the Brayser says v'toval, and he went to the mikveh. Now, usually a Zav is not allowed to enter into even the Ezras Noshim, or for that matter, the entire Har HaBayis, which, as I said before, is equivalent to Machne Leviyah. A Zav doesn't only have to leave Machne Shchina, the Azar itself, but he's also not allowed to enter this area, which is the Ezras Noshim. So now the question is, this person saw Keri today, and he was Toivel already, so this is what's called a Tvul Yaim. He wants to be able to enter into that area in order to be able to bring his carbon that he has to as a Mitzayda, in order to be Mitzayed himself, to be able to eat from the carbon Pesach. Says the Braisa, Amru Chachamim, the Chachamim said, Afal Pi, She'ein Tvul Yaim Acher Nichnas. Usually a regular Tvul Yaim that was a Zav, and he already went to the mikveh, he's not allowed to enter into the Ezras Noshim, Zeh Nichnas. This individual, we allow him to enter into the Ezras Noshim, to stick his hands into the Azara. Why? Mutif sheyavei ese sheyesh beikaris, because it's better that this mitzvah saseh of the carbon Pesach, which is a mitzvah saseh that if you don't do it, there's karis. V'yitche ese she'ein beikaris, and it should push off the ese that has no karis. What's the ese that has no karis? This ese that a tvul yain, which was a zav, is not allowed to enter into this place, into the Ezras Noshim, which is like a Machne Leviyah. The fact that he's not allowed to enter there, that's a ese she'ein beikaris. We push off that iser. We allow him to enter there, to put his fingers inside in order that he should be able to bring the carbon Pesach, which is a mitzvah that had this karis to it. Now, on this Braisa, Rabbi Yechanan went, this is all an introduction. We're going to come to the point that we're trying to say, Hayol v'ishtiri ishtiri. So now, on this Braisa, the Gemara brings Rabbi Yechanan. V'amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan actually said a further point, that the truth is, Devar Teire, Afila Esa Lespe. This person that saw Keri, and he taiveled already. He's a Tful Yom. So the truth is, Mina Teire, he's allowed to enter in the Ezras Noshim. There's no issue. Shenema, we could see this from a pasuk where it says, "Vayamed Yehoshaphat Bekal Yehuda Lifnei Chatzar HaChadosha." This is a pasuk which describes the first time when they made this Ezras Noshim. Originally, the Ezras Noshim is not part of the area of the Beis HaMikdash. So then they made this new Chatzar HaChadosha, new courtyard, which refers to this Ezras Noshim that they designated. My Chatzar HaChadosha. So he explained, what does this term mean? A new courtyard. So Amar Rabbi Yechanan said, or it says there, Amar Rabbi said, Shechitshu ba'dvarim, that they were mechadish, a new halacha, a new status regarding the Ezras Noshim, va'amru, and they said, Tful Yaim lo yikanes la machna leviyah, that even a person which is a Tful Yaim, with this person that we're speaking about over here, he saw a Keri, and he went to the mikvah on this day, and he's a Tful Yaim, lo yikanes la machna leviyah, he's not allowed to enter into this machna leviyah, into the Ezras Noshim. Okay, so basically, according to what Rabbi is saying here, so we're going to be pushing off this institution that they were masakin at this point. It's not even in Atayra B'chlal. We're pushing off that Isser of a Tvul Yom entering into the Ezras Nashim in order for him to be able to bring a carbon Pesach, which is a mitzvah saseh, sheyesh b'kares. That's what it said here in this Braisa, together with what Rabbi Yechanan said, what Rabbi said. Now the Gemara says, "Va'amar Ule." Now Ule came and said. So the Gemara here does not say what this Ule is speaking about, but Rashi here brings the whole background from the Gemara in Zvachim and in Menachos. And what Ule is coming to say is everything we said until here only works according to the opinion that says bias miktsas lo yishmei bia, that the mitzayda he sticks in his fingers, and because he sticks in his fingers, so that's why it's allowed for him to be able to put the blood on his hands, because if he's not walking in fully, if it's just his fingers that are going in, that's not a bia. He didn't enter, and that's okay. Ula, however, disagrees. Ula holds bias miktsas shmei bia. Even if you just stick in your fingers, it is considered to be a bia. So the question, according to Ula, is if bias miktsas shmei bia, so then how are we letting this person go in? How are we letting him stick his fingers in? And how are we letting him enter, even though he's at full yaim? At full yaim, there's an ism of the Rabbana for him to be to go into this area. So why are we allowing this? So now Ula says, to explain his opinion, V'amar Ula, ma tam, why do we let this individual, which is at full yaim, enter into this area to bring his carbon as a mitzayre and for them to put the blood on his finger? So he said as follows, Hoyel v'hutar litzaratoi, since I see that the Torah says that although usually bias miktsas is a bia, and you're not allowed to stick in your finger if you're a mechusik Yippurim. You're not allowed to go in just a little bit if you're tummy into the Beis HaMikdash. But the Torah said that for a mitzayre this is allowed. How do I? Because you must say that it's allowed for a mitzayre. Because otherwise, how are you ever going to put the blood on his finger? So since I see b'negeh to a mitzayre, the Torah makes an exception, even though usually bias miktsas shmei bia, and you're not allowed to stick in your finger. But for a mitzayre, the Torah allows him to stick in his finger. So once the Torah made this heter for a mitzayre, hutar lekiryai. So therefore, that heter that applies for the mitzayre applies also for this person that's a balkeri and is now at full yaim, and usually is not allowed to enter this area. If the heter is for the mitzayre, I apply that heter also for the fact that he's a balkeri and he could enter. He could come over here into the Ezras Nashim. Okay, so this is the Gemara source for this concept that once I see that there's a heter for one iser, I then say that I apply that heter also to the fact that he's a balkeri. So similar, the Gemara wants to say, when I get to what we're speaking about over here, that once I see that the Torah gives the heter for Eishes Ach, I automatically apply that heter for if she would also be another erve, I apply that heter to the other erve as well. And you should be allowed to do the mitzvah of Yibum. That's why I need a special pasuk of Allah to teach me that there is no heter. The Gemara will refute this limit as well, as we'll see.
Yeah, but what's the